Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Michael Pohl, and we're going to be looking at unlearning corporate anti-intuition culture with 12 top hacks he has for boosting your business intuition. We'll look at the deviously clever ways he blocked his intuition for over 7 years when he was working in banks in London, how the corporate culture works against using intuition openly, the 12 top hacks for boosting your business intuition that he uses every day, and how constant stress can be blocking your intuition. Also, he has just co-founded the X Mansion, a next-level entrepreneurial co-living, co-working space that's location independent itself, which will be incarnating in Lisbon real soon now, I think in September, if I remember right. So welcome, Michael.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
And just in case you don't know him, he is a health enthusiast, entrepreneur, cryptocurrency educator, and he, as I said earlier, co-founded the X Mansion, which is a very exciting new initiative. So you worked for a long time in the corporate world at a bank in London. Can't get much more uptight and stiff-lipped than that.
Yeah, totally.
But prior to that, you were telling me earlier that you were, you went to a Waldorf school. You were really pretty open and intuitive. So how on earth did you manage to close down your intuition during those 7 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Actually, I wasn't Waldorf schooled, but I was homeschooled, so it's a similar kind of model. That's fine. But yeah, so I like the Waldorf concept. It's a great idea of schooling children in a more holistic way. So we can definitely talk about that. But yeah, so for the first 10, 11 years, I was homeschooled. I think that's quite important. We can get into that. And then obviously I went through to normal schooling, college education, university, came out into the corporate world. And so, yeah, I worked, in the banks in London for about 6, 7 years. Moved to Singapore, did a couple more years in Singapore. Very heavy kind of corporate culture, working in IT, in the banking finance industries. So yeah, it's like it doesn't get any more stressful than that. I think that kind of intuition, gets crushed at a very early age. Actually, I noticed it when I went to school that you wear a uniform, you're forced to conform, just obey, just follow orders, and then that continues pretty much throughout your career. So yeah, so that's something I've always felt didn't sit right, and I guess I didn't have any other models or frameworks to compare it to. So it took me a while to kind of figure my way through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Schools do a lot of things to turn people into automatons. It's not just the obeying orders. They have bells that ring like every hour, and you're supposed to change what you're doing. It doesn't matter how interested you are in geometry or French or art or whatever the subject was. Now you have to switch to some other subject just because the bell rang.
Yeah, it's like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah, exactly. So, and how many, when you go into the corporate culture, it's a bit more subtle there, but same kind of thing. You're basically expected to follow orders and follow the group mind think.
Yeah, you got to be rushing into work so you're not late. If you're late, your boss gives you hell. If you're late for meetings, you feel the stress, and so you're just rushing all the time. And I think that doesn't really give you space to ever stop and reflect on what you're doing. The system is designed to keep you very busy and very distracted, and it's a very clever trick.
Yeah. How do they keep us distracted?
Well, I think time is a really interesting concept. I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but kind of how we perceive time. Well, like you said, they ring the bell every hour in school, so time is kind of divided up into these periods, and so the way we perceive time is kind of like this linear divided concept. It can be very stressful because you're always rushing to something. Either you're rushing to school, or you're rushing to pick your kids up, or you're rushing to meet a deadline. And this whole framework of how we live, time can be useful, obviously, to arrange meetings and stuff. But I think when you let it run your life like that, and you always feel like there's never enough time, that's kind of how it feels for most people. And I think that's where a lot of stress comes from, because you just feel like you never have enough time. Like you have two days a weekend to yourself, and then 5 days back to work. Everyone dreads going back to work on Monday. They hate Mondays. They look forward to Fridays, live for the weekend. I mean, this whole mentality is kind of crazy.
Well, I think we're lucky we get 2-day weekend. It used to be a 1.5-day weekend, not that long ago. People worked Saturday mornings regularly, and before that they would work the whole of Saturday. It was only Sunday they got off. So
yeah. Well, if you work in the banking world, that's also quite common. You get called in any hour, you're on call. So it's like constant. Yeah, you're constantly alert, constantly on. It's you can never switch off.
Right, because even when you've gone home for the evening or it's the weekend, you're supposed to have your phone with you constantly.
Yeah.
Kind of glued to your hip or wherever you stash your phone.
Yeah, and that becomes your identity, you know, because you're so wrapped up with work. That's who you identify yourself with. So what you think of success is how much money you earn, your whole status, all that kind of thing. You compare yourself to your colleagues, and you know you're going to get a promotion next year, and that's just what drives you. But you know, that's only really part of who we are. It's like we have to connect with ourselves to really understand what makes us tick, you know, what we enjoy. We never get that time, like I said, because of how the system is kind of designed. You're just rushed into education, then you're in debt, then you have to get a job to pay off your debt, and then you get a mortgage, then you're in more debt, and it's just, you know, it's that whole wheel. It's very, very clever.
It is. It's the that's not quite the corporate career ladder that people climb, though. That's another little trap. It's like the life success ladder that you're supposed to do those steps, and if you aren't doing them, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. And you look around you see everyone else doing it, and you think that's normal. So unless you really have your own mind and you have other people or models you can look up to, or you know, see how a different path, it's very hard to get out of that. It's just all around you.
Yeah, I remember some friends at college, and they were like, you know, they'd done a degree in, let's say, English or whatever it was that they had passion about. And then when it came to looking jobs, they're like, I've got to go get a good job so I can get the mortgage. So they go off and work at accounting companies or consultancy companies, and they hated their jobs. You know, it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? You know? But,
I think I got.
Not to say some accountants may not love their jobs, but you know, there are definitely some people who go into it just because it's like the right thing to do. And the same thing with law and medicine.
We're looking too much sort of rationally or logically, you know, in terms of what's going to make us money, what we think we need to be happy. And so even if you don't really enjoy it, you'll do it just because you think that's what it's going to take to be successful in the world, and that's what it's going to take to be happy. So it's like where we find purpose and happiness is just, you know, it's in these things that the system teaches you. You know, you think you need that to be happy. So you get career counseling at school. They tell you, you know, what career do you want to have? Already they're locking you to a certain path or a certain decision, a certain, you know, choice A or choice B, and there's you know, that's a very limited choice. So.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I either wanted to be a math professor or an entrepreneur. And I either wanted to go to the United States or go to Hong Kong because I figured they were more entrepreneurial.
Oh, that's pretty open-minded already. Yeah.
And I went to the career counselor, and he was like, go be an actuary, you know.
Doesn't fit into my reality box. Yeah, choose this or this one. Yeah.
Fortunately, I didn't follow his advice. But, you know, we mentioned how corporations have systems, you know, the norms are stay busy, follow the clock, get a lot of distractions. But why exactly does that block your intuition?
I think when you're in a state of chronic stress, and most people don't even realize they are because it's so normal, that, you know, you're not really able to access other parts of yourself that can guide you, that can tell you, you know, what to do. So your intuition, it's very much comes from a state of not doing so much, but more like being, and really in terms of like feeling your body almost. There's a whole mind-body connection there, which I think most people are so disconnected to their bodies. That's why we eat a lot of bad food. That's why we, you know, don't look after ourselves, and we don't value our health or our time. So there's all these kind of things that kind of block that. It's just these mental constructs that that keep you disconnected from who you really are. And I think a lot of that has to do with the environment. And it's not just the work environment, but the fact, you know, we live totally indoors, cut off from nature, and that's really powerful. The effect people don't really realize what that has. And obviously, then on top of that, you have all the, you know, the culture around you, and politics and work and things like that, especially in these high pressure jobs, and there's backstabbing and all that kind of stuff goes on. So it's it's crazy.
Yeah, office politics. That's probably another thing that gets in the way of being open about your intuition, because you might be worried, what will other people think, or will they use this against me?
You have to be so guarded. I mean, you're always worrying about who's going to use exactly information against you. If you share stuff openly, you're worried it might be used against you. So I don't think many corporations have a very good culture for that, for, you know, encouraging that kind of collaboration. It is a very competitive world, especially in consulting, where I kind of came from. So, you know, you might have one or two friends you trust, but ultimately, you have to really, you feel like you have to really look out for yourself, and it feels like that kind of survival mode. Whenever you're in survival mode, you don't have access to your intuition. It's very hard to tap into that because you're just worried about, you know, getting through the day, trying to get the next promotion, and doing whatever it takes to get that, just pushing to do that. So.
Wow, when you speak about it, I almost feel I'm in a bank in competition with the other people, you know. and I'm just thinking that sort of mirrors how many schools are, that you're in competition for exams and there's only a limited number of university places and you mustn't collaborate.
Scarcity, yeah.
Right. You mustn't collaborate with other people. Whereas in the best companies, teamwork and collaboration is the way to get creativity and have the most success. So it's kind of ironic.
And I saw that when I moved to Singapore, those systems there are even more, people can't do anything without thinking for themselves. They have to take orders. They can't think for themselves. The way the education system is set up is just purely obey, follow. And so these guys are just locked in there, and they literally just cannot think for themselves. They're frozen until they get directions from their bosses. And so they have no way of tapping into intuition and things like that. It's even harder, I think, in some other systems.
Yeah, I've done some business with some companies in Singapore, and sometimes I get frustrated when they are following the rules to such a degree. Not everyone, but I got so frustrated with one of the companies there. I just kind of did a whole bunch of magic and upgraded everyone in the company to a higher level of consciousness because I was tired of them not being able to do what was obviously the right thing for their customers. And then a few days later, they managed to figure out how to do it. So,
nice.
Yes, they came into my reality. That's their problem.
If you can do that, that's really powerful. I think it takes some skill and some learning to really know how to share that with other people, and that's kind of what I'm getting into now. So the corporate world is really tough to crack.
Yeah, and some of the other things that we talked about earlier, the ways people clamp down on using their intuition openly. Obviously, whatever their parents' viewpoint was, which is probably the same. Don't use your intuition openly; it's dangerous. Churches and cults. I think you mentioned you were in a cult or something, or a church, or something that began with the letter C.
Yeah, same thing more or less, but one is recognized by society and one is demonized. But I think any belief system which is really rigid, especially if you're enforced at a young age, you don't have that kind of discernment to know. You just you're kind of you're taking everything in, and you're just like a sponge. So I think a lot of our belief systems are shoved in at a very early age before we can question them. And if the parents are not giving you the information in any context, then they're probably doing the same thing they got from their parents, and that's just kind of passed down generation to generation. And it's a cycle. It's really interesting how we take those beliefs in, and then if we never question them. And I think this is what our generation is going through now. There's this big awakening to realize, wait, what we were taught by our parents and that what worked for them is not going to work for us. And so we have to really think and find our own path and question everything to find out more about who we are.
Well, that leads me into the 12 top hacks for boosting your intuition, because I know the first one you mentioned to me was question all belief systems. So that's a meta belief for helping you get rid of beliefs that are not useful anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, the best place to start with is, I don't know. And every time you say, I don't know, it opens up the potential to anything. And the second you think you know something, you lock yourself into a certain way of thinking. And so that for me has been, I'm very careful about doing that. I try not to identify or attach too closely to one belief system, because something else might come along that just makes more sense. And so I don't want to be stuck in a dogma that stops me moving to a better way of doing something. So I grew up in a cult where they were very rigid and had a lot of belief systems, and that affected me for a long time before I was able to let go and release that. Then I went to school. From being homeschooled, I went into the normal schooling system. The education system, again, there's a lot of rigid belief systems about what it takes to be successful. And then as an entrepreneur, again, you have belief systems that, you need to be productive. There's all these hacks for, doing things more effectively with your time, Pomodoros and all these kind of things, which I think, it can't be helpful in context. But again, a lot of it is seeing time as kind of a scarcity thing. It's always rushing around. And again, that's not a great place to access your intuition from, because you're approaching things from a place of lack. And so I try and question all belief systems and see, is this really true for me? And it's an easier way of looking at things. You don't have to be so attached.
Yeah, be open to what's coming in the moment. And the idea of just being and doing nothing, I can imagine being accused in school, hey, Michael, are you daydreaming?
Yeah. I was a massive
it's an evil thing. And many churches and other systems have a belief that idle hands are work for the devil, or I'm misquoting that, but there's
they don't you think beliefs. For yourself. Yeah,
thinking yourself is dangerous. And also some religions or churches have beliefs that if you if you're hearing voices, well, maybe that's the devil talking to you as opposed to your intuition. So, of course, there's the other view in some religions that it's angels talking to you or it's God talking to you or whatever. So, but it's definitely not strongly encouraged. They'd much rather the priest or whoever the leader of the church is the one getting the inspired messages, and then they pass them on to the congregation, rather than each of the congregation being able to hear their messages themselves.
I think a big part of that has always been putting someone between you and then whatever you want to call it, God, creator, consciousness, and someone is the expert who you have to go through to get that knowledge or get that, wisdom or intuition. So I think I've been able to kind of get that directly through nature, and that's a really interesting thing that's happened for me lately. But I think we all have different ways of doing that. So some people have, they believe in spirituality in one form or another, or they have one religion that works for them. But I think direct access and direct experience is the most powerful thing to opening up intuition, rather than just reading books and trying to intellectually understand something, because there's very limited. There's only so far we can go with that. And it's only one part of us, but that's the part that's really reinforced and really conditioned into us. So it comes at a cost.
Yeah, and I've done a process that I believe Quakers do at their meeting, where everyone sits in a group and you're all silent until you're inspired to speak. So that seems to be more open to the individual getting direct info from spirit. So, but
I like that.
It's a nice practice to do, whether you're a Quaker or not. I'm not a Quaker, but it's a nice thing to do in a group. Just sit in meditative silence together, which is a powerful thing, even if you're not interrupting to speak on occasion. Just being in a group in silence is great for the group's consciousness and mind. So we talked about 12 hacks you use for boosting your intuition and questioning all belief systems so that they don't get in the way of you accessing your intuition. What other things do you use?
So I think for me, nature has been the biggest one, and there's different aspects of that in terms of how our bodies respond. I think the environment you're in is really powerful. That's kind of something I've come to understand more and more. I didn't realize that when I worked in the corporate world, and when I spent a lot of time at my computer, I think people think that's very normal. But actually, what I found is that being in nature is a completely different environment that your body responds to completely differently. And so, in terms of being in touch with your body, that is where intuition comes from. That mind-body connection. It really depends on your state, and your state is dependent on your environment. So we can talk a little bit about that maybe. And there's tons of things in there.
Why? I mean, do you mean to say that humans didn't evolve hundreds of thousands of years ago sitting in front of computers? Aren't there like caveman paintings where they're sat in front of a laptop, contemplating the bison on the veldt that they're going to hunt later?
Yeah, exactly. I think, a lot of people, we just grew up in an environment. We don't question it again because it's what we think is normal, and the world is designed that way, almost to keep us in a very artificial environment. So it's really interesting when you get into these futurist philosophies. Are we in a simulation or all this kind of stuff? But fundamentally, when you're in nature, it's very, very powerful. When you do it consistently, for me, it changes my whole state. And I think we do entrain to our vibration. We are ultimately, we pick up energy, we're sensitive to energy, we get it all around us. So you're either taking it in from nature or you're taking it in from your environment, wherever you are. And I think when you're indoors and, more and more in cities, you're exposed to, bad air, Wi-Fi, EMF. These are all spectrums of stress and light that affect us. And when you're in nature, it actually reverses some of that and gives you more resilience because it's exposing you to your natural state. We have kind of disconnected ourselves from nature and see it as ourselves as separate. Again, this is the whole thing of looking at ourselves, identifying with our body as who we are, but actually we are a part of nature, and so you can't really disconnect yourself from nature without feeling the consequences. It's like taking a plant indoors and it wilts. It's the same concept. We just wilt slower. So
wilt slower. I like that phrase. Yeah, I could just see all the people in their corporate cubes slowly wilting, their auras turning gray and mushy.
Yeah, I don't know how it all plays out, but I think that your energy is massively affected. I think I got so much energy now, and I eat so much less because I'm in nature so much more, and so I get a lot more of my energy from nature, and that's how people compensate. When they don't have that, they end up eating more. You become addicted to certain foods, and you need those things to compensate because you're not in your natural environment. So a lot of addictions are just compensation for lack of dopamine, which you get from the sun. So for example, being outside, being in nature. Even so far as, like in London, I go out every day, whether it's sunny or cloudy, it doesn't make a difference because I feel so good at the end of it, that I can't really go a day without that. I feel like, it's so noticeable to me when I'm indoors, and I try and spend less and less time on my laptop. Obviously, we all have to make a living, but I think there's definitely a balance there, and just trying to do more all the time doesn't really lead to the results you might be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of EMF, I've got one of the, I just went to grab one of these. I've got a little, I don't know if you can see that here.
Trifield, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little thing that measures magnetic fields and electric fields. And in fact, if I put it nearer to my computer, let me see if I can do that. You see how it's going up? Now I'm 6 inches away from it and it's like going, whoa! So I got this a few years back and I went around my house and like saw where are the electromagnetic fields, where are the radio fields, and it turned out right next to my bed there was this enormous EMF field, and it's because the electricity came into the house there and went through a little converter thing, and I don't know if it was wired wrong or what, but I moved my bed into another room and I started sleeping a lot better.
Yeah, massive. That's such a big thing. The grounding and the wiring in the house, the electricity, is just not something that's recognized even. But more and more, I think people are becoming aware of these things. Obviously, we carry cell phones around all the time. We're exposed to constant EMF in cities. It's really I'm in a block. You might have 20 Wi-Fi signals at any one time that your body's just constantly being exposed to. And this kind of background chronic stress is something that it kind of wears down your resilience over time, so you don't even realize it. And we kind of chalk that down to aging, which is really interesting because of what we think now as aging is like, oh, it's normal to get diabetes, it's normal to be obese, it's normal to get Alzheimer's, all these kind of weird conditions that's just become normal because we see it happening all around us. But this is obviously not how our bodies are supposed to be.
I don't think it is normal to age. I think it's normal to be healthy and young as long as you care to be incarnated in this body.
Yeah. I think I'm realizing that more and more in nature, that I feel better than I did 10 years ago. So I think we can all, if you question all reality, literally questioning all belief systems, going so far as the fact, do we have to age the way we think we need to age? Is it inevitable to get these diseases like cancer? Obviously, I think once you reach a certain level of health and vitality, you realize the rest of the world is just on a different path. And I really feel like reality is diverging. That's very interesting, that some people are really waking up, taking power back over their bodies and their minds, and some people are still completely clueless and just following conventional science and nutrition and diet and all these things. They only lead you so far. So I think this all ties into intuition, because your body has to be working, functioning correctly and optimally for you to have that energy, for you to be access intuition. So I feel like that comes when you're in nature, when you're in a good environment. When you're not, it's just that much harder. I don't know how. Yeah, maybe some people have mastered how to do that, but I find it's just so much easier in nature. So
yeah, I mean, I opened up to this, late 1990s, I think. There's a book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, that doesn't totally talk to the aging as a false belief, though I guess it does, maybe not explicitly, but it does list all the possible symptoms and diseases you might have and what their spiritual meaning is. And a lot of disease comes from false beliefs manifesting into the body. I think it also comes just from us when we're stressed. We tend to stuff energy into body parts we don't pay attention to. And if you stuff enough crappy energy into a body part over years, it will physically degrade,
Yeah,
so.
I think in this concept of stagnant energy, the Chinese have this system of TCM. Obviously, it's about every illness, every disease coming from an energy blockage in the body. And I think stress and trauma is one way that energy can get stuck. And obviously, when you eat bad food or you're in a bad environment, the energy is not flowing. And you can take grounding as an example. When you're in nature, the Earth has a negative electrical potential, so you have basically electron donors coming in through the Earth if you're grounded barefoot, coming into your body, and this changes the whole state of your body. Like you can feel it if you're in nature. You become so relaxed very quickly, and that state of stress you were in just kind of disappears within half an hour. It's gone. But we never take that time consistently to experience that, and I feel like it's very powerful when you start to do these things consistently on a daily basis. It's cumulative, just like being in an office all day is wearing down your resilience. Over time, being in nature kind of builds it up. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, and I think everyone can relate to that. Just going for a walk in the park, or if you ever go to the seaside and just sit on the beach, that's really rejuvenating. So.
Yeah, I mean, look what everyone does when they go on holiday. They go rushing to the beach, so their body knows. They just haven't figured it out. It's interesting.
One of the hacks I used for this is a thing called an earthing sheet or an earthing pad, where it's a bed sheet that has little silver threads in it, and then you hook it into the earth, or you run a line out into the garden and pound a copper stake into the ground, not for killing vampires, but to connect you to the earth. And I found I do sleep better when I have that going. And I have one under my computer too, so I'm more grounded, even though I'm sitting in front of the computer a fair amount. And I do take breaks. Like after I've done this interview, I'm going to go outside. There's a little piece of garden there. I'm just going to lie down and shake on the grass, because it's like releases any crap I've picked up by working on the computer.
Yeah, I used to take my grounding mat into the corporate world, actually. So I started getting to this stuff a little bit earlier, and I used to take it in. I did think it helped, but it's compensating for something, right? Like being in an unnatural environment. So there's a lot of other things I had to release and remove, and obviously being outside was just much more powerful entrainment in terms of the environment I was in. So I think I use those things when I had to, and it can be useful. But ultimately, there's nothing that can really substitute for just being in nature. And again, when you go outside, like you said, getting grounded, getting barefoot, because most of us wear shoes, we walk on concrete, we're never really connecting with our environment. And the system, I think, is kind of designed that way. It's designed to keep you disconnected, because that's where your true power is. Just as the church for years tried to stop Bibles being printed so people couldn't access information directly, I think there's certain systems of control still set up to kind of keep us disconnected from our true power. So I think we don't really realize or appreciate how powerful nature is.
Yeah, going barefoot is definitely a good thing. Shoes these days are usually made of plastic instead of leather, and I think
the insulators,
yeah, there it's an insulator. Whereas at least a leather shoe does have some conductivity. Though I have seen people who have shoes with these little metal conductor things that go through the soles, so you are, even though you're wearing a shoe, you're still grounded.
Yeah, I tried those.
Yeah, they felt good when I tried them. Trying those again. The other thing I do with the Wi-Fi is I just went to the hardware store and got one of those little electronic timers that turn a thing on and off at certain times of the day. So the Wi-Fi turns off at 11 p.m. and turns on at 6 a.m. And I find that helps me sleep better by not having the Wi-Fi running 24/7.
Yeah, I think if it's a really powerful reader as well, they can be really close to your head, then those things make a huge difference. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this idea that you should sleep with your cell phone under your pillow is nuts.
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah.
Because they give up. If you use one of these things, not that I don't get any money for telling you about that, but if you bring them near to a cell phone, particularly one that's like, getting data or making a call, you'd be blown away by how much cell phones give off. And I never put a cell phone next to my head if I can avoid it. They just give off far too much radiation.
And the thing is, again, if you're using a cell phone but you're grounded, that stuff is getting discharged, because the most powerful entrainment is the earth. But when you're insulated, all that energy is staying in you. Essentially, it's got nowhere to go. There's no flow. So your body is completely in flow when you're grounded, because you're connected to your environment, and that's really who you are. Is part of nature. But when you're disconnected, all those energy points just it just stays in you, and that's where the energy gets stuck. So I actually don't worry too much about cell phone signals and Wi-Fi anymore. I find that I used to care about that stuff when I didn't really have access to nature, and I felt like it made a difference. I was definitely noticing when I would, get away from that, it would help. But now that I'm in nature, obviously I don't try and use a cell phone all the time, but I just don't care about it as much, because I find that my resilience is so much stronger. I can be in a city and I can still have, incredible health and energy. I never get sick anymore. So as long as you have the right daily practice and sort of consistency, you can build up resiliency, and then things like fasting and sun gazing we can talk about are really, really powerful techniques to kind of, recharge your body and regenerate your body. So all those things kind of work together with nature.
Yeah, we'll talk about those in a moment. I think it's also possible to do magic on yourself to like make the EMF or whatever the other stresses in your environment are not affect you. It's almost like one of those waveform things where one wave passes through another and it doesn't affect the first one. You can definitely, I've done this with electronics that, they continue to have their EMF, but it just doesn't affect me.
Yeah, and that comes back to belief systems. So it's really interesting. I met a functional neurology doctor just the other day, and he does muscle testing, with kinesiology to test what causes stress in the body and how your body responds to that. And what was very interesting was he could actually test which of the things were beliefs about something making you weak that actually were causing the weakness in the body. So he could actually show what was almost placebo, you know, that effective belief.
Right.
And that was really interesting, because if you have that intention that you're not affected, and you can, you know, create almost like a shield, or, you know, that energy around you is strong, then you're not affected by these things. And again, I think being in nature really builds up that energy field around you, so you become very strong, and you're not so susceptible to all these stresses.
Yeah, muscle testing is a great way to hear your internal intuitive voice, to hear a yes or no. So it's well worth checking that out.
Really interesting stuff.
So it's amazing. So you mentioned fasting. How often do you fast? And are you just not eating food? Are you not drinking water, or what's your?
Yeah, so I probably started fasting about 8 years ago, and I think, you know, there's different levels of fasting. So when people think of fasting, they'll have different ideas. Some people think it's just having a juice for a few days. You know, you have like a fruit fast or a juice fast. So I've done those things, and then I gradually moved on to, you know, doing a green juice fast with no sugar, and that's a lot less appealing to start with when you're addicted to sugar. And then gradually, you know, moving to water fast with no calories, and then even from there to no water, so water restriction or dry fasting, which is, I guess, the harshest or most, you know, severe form of fasting in terms of what the body can take. And all these things have slightly different effects, but I would say that, you know, start somewhere, because all those things can be beneficial just to help clear out your body over time. Especially if you eat a lot of refined food, you don't know what that's doing over time to your body, and especially you know, it's just good to clear out, and the body doesn't need to be fed as much as we think it does. So I think the biggest thing for me was when I went, for example, 17 days on a water fast. I had no food for 17 days. I was in a city. I was still under a lot of stress, and, you know, I wasn't doing everything correctly, but I was able to go 17 days without any food, and so that taught me a lot, that my body is a way more resilient than I thought it was. And you know, those kind of experiences really push you outside your reality box, and you realize, oh wait, there's a lot more going on. You know, we never get taught these things, but fasting is a major part of all religions. I think, you know, you look to Jainism, Christianity, Judaism, even the Islam today, right? Muslims today, the Ramadan, they fast. So I think it's something we just kind of lost that knowledge over time. But the body goes through a sort of healing process when you fast, and especially without food and without water, it's really accelerated that healing regenerative process. And we can talk about the science if you want, or in terms of the spiritual benefits. I don't know what's more interesting to you.
Well, let's briefly mention both of them.
Sure. So from a scientific perspective, I think intermittent fasting is becoming very accepted now. That's more in the paleo sphere. People recognize, you know, you don't need to eat 3 meals a day, because when you stop eating, basically your body goes into repair mode. So you have this thing called autophagy, where your body is basically clearing out dead cells and weak cells. And what you're doing basically when you fast is you're putting your body into a state of stress, but it's how your body responds to that stress that's actually quite beneficial. So, you know, it's almost like the fittest cells survive. So if there's weak cells or cancer cells, and you're restricting nutrition in your body, those weak cells won't survive. And so you can use that to clear out any kind of illness or disease fundamentally just with fasting. And it's a really, really powerful thing. People have noticed they can heal, you know, leaky gut and things like that. Just with a 3-day fast, you can regenerate your immune system. These are actual scientific studies on PubMed. You can go look up. And then obviously prolonged fasting is where you go more than a few days without food. So I think, you know, 17 days is the longest I've done. I've seen other people do 30, 40-day fasts. So what the body can do is really quite miraculous. And then the other benefits that come, I guess, more the mental piece you get from not eating, that detachment from your body is very interesting. How it changes your perception, your reality. So yeah, so it's really interesting.
How was your reality changed by not eating for 17 days?
Well, so the first thing is, you know, after a few days, you actually stop feeling hungry. And then you're like, okay, what is this? Because, you know, you're still moving around, you're still operating, but you're not getting energy from food. So you start to realize, oh, where am I getting energy from then? And you start to become more aware of your body. And you just realize that, you know, our bodies run on a lot of other things except food. And so you basically, you're not so attached to what you're eating in terms of the kind of sensory stimulation we get. You know, we're always attached to our 5 senses. So it's like we perceive reality by what we see, by what we touch, by what we eat. All these kind of senses are triggered all the time. And so that becomes what we think of as reality. Suddenly, when you're not eating, you're not taking in food, your whole reality changes because you're not getting that stimulus. And when your attention, your focus is not on those things, it starts to go inwards, and you just have much more awareness internally of what's going on in your body. Yeah, it's a very different state of, it's almost like a different state of consciousness. It's, yeah, you have to experience it to really understand it, but it's very powerful, and you just tend to, yeah, stop stop pushing so hard, you take more time to relax, you just, you maybe meditate for more, or you just kind of connect with your body, and you get, I think, the access to intuition is really powerful, actually, because when you're not constantly stimulated by external things, your attention and focus is really freed up for other access to awareness that you didn't have before. So
yeah, I mean, I've fasted 1 day a week for at least 5 years, and I found it very useful for not both getting in touch with my intuition, but also not being as addicted to food. And when I'm emotionally upset, not immediately reaching for food as the way to deal with that. And if people listening are thinking, oh, that's too much, I couldn't deal with not eating food for a day, just consider that everyone eats breakfast, right? I'm pronouncing that a little weird, because you're breaking the fast that you took when you last ate dinner until you got up and ate breakfast.
Yeah.
And if you push the dinner off or get rid of dinner, and don't eat so late at night, and maybe move breakfast later in the day, you could easily be fasting for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And sleep is regenerative in a health sense and for getting intuitive messages for several reasons. But I think one of them is because you're just not eating during that time when you're in bed.
So you can extend that fast even longer. And I think, again, being in nature is really interesting, because I did that 17-day fast, but I wasn't in nature very often. I was going maybe outside a little bit, but mostly indoors. And then earlier this year, actually, I did a fast in Portugal, and I was basically by the beach. I had access to the beach every day. I was swimming every day, obviously grounded, doing yoga outdoors every day. I started sun gazing, getting 2-3 hours of sun a day. Suddenly I had so much energy. I was realizing I'm totally eating out of habit. I'm not even feeling any hunger. I'm just eating because it's dinner time. My wife's, making dinner, or we're going out for dinner. And I thought, what if I stop eating? What's going to happen? And I actually stopped eating, and I stopped drinking water as well. And I went basically 6 days without any food and water. And I found it was even easier than the previous fasts, because I had so much more energy just from being in nature. So that was a really powerful shift in again, my perception of how much power we can draw from nature, not just physically, but mentally, in terms of our whole connection to nature. And since then, I've been spending a lot more time in nature, because I just feel it's a much more natural way to be, to live.
Yeah, I mean, I did a vision quest where we didn't eat for 4 days and 3 nights and didn't drink any fluids either. And we started with a sweat lodge and ended with a sweat lodge. And I sweated both times. It was like, where's this water coming from?
Right.
And although my mouth was dry, I didn't feel thirsty. I didn't feel hungry. So it's quite, and we danced to native Indian, chanting and what have you. So, and we did do sun gazing in that too. So it's very interesting that we can take energy in, take prana in directly from the earth, from the sun, for just by using our consciousness to direct the prana. We don't have to use food to get energy. And the other thing that, I don't know if this was your experience, I was amazed. I'm still going to the toilet every day. Where's this stuff coming from,
Yeah, I think because I've done a few fasts, so it's different every time, and I've experienced different symptoms. Sometimes I got really weird back pain that passed after a few times fasting. I don't tend to go to the toilet so much more nowadays. When I fast, after a few days, it's gone. But when I first started fasting, that was very normal. I think your body has just a lot of stuff to still eliminate and clear out. So it's different for everyone. We all have kind of different symptoms. But now I find after a couple of days, the hunger's just gone, and it's just very easy. And if I'm in nature, I don't even think about it. I think it's more, again, being in your environment. If you're around other people eating, you get reminded of that. It's more of a mental thing than actual physical hunger. So it's interesting.
And a social thing, as you mentioned. We do it to be social, and it's just a habit. So
and I enjoy eating. It's not like I don't like to eat. So it's not like I'm saying you never need to eat. But I tend to have a much better sense for what food is good for me, and I just can't eat refined food, bad food. I feel it instantly. It affects me very, very quickly. I'm just more sensitive to what it's doing, so I just avoid it intuitively. I know that it's not going to help me, and I'm able to make better choices generally. So so that's one benefit.
Now, you talked about sun gazing. Does that mean looking at the sun, or it sounds a little dangerous?
So I've spoken with a few people about this, and obviously they'll warn you. I think, again, this is a really interesting thing about questioning belief systems, because if you look at what convention says, they say, oh, you look at the sun, you go blind, or the sun's going to give you cancer, and there's a lot of fear and all these fear programs running and suppression to kind of keep us disconnected. That's how it feels. And so I'm not sure exactly when it started. I think, again, early this year in Lisbon, we were in a flat, and the flat was very dingy. There wasn't much light coming in, and I just felt like there's so much sun outside. Why am I going to sit in here? So I was basically going out to the ocean every day by the water, sitting in a cafe and just kind of really being outdoors and just loving it, and, doing my work there. And after sort of a few weeks of that, I would be indoors and I'd be like, oh, this is horrible. I hate it in here. It's like so dingy. There's no light at all. And my body could really feel the difference. So I got into that natural habit of just being outdoors. And I think also we're so used to wearing sunglasses because our eyes are so sensitive, again, because we're so removed from our natural environment. So when you wear sunglasses, you're disconnecting yourself, from the source of all life. Life, essentially, the sun that's what it does. Nothing can really live without sunlight. And we can't really either. So I think getting away from being indoors made my eyes and generally my body a lot more resilient to the sun, and I was able to spend more and more time. Obviously, build up tolerance. My skin started tanning. I wasn't burning or anything like that, so my body was totally fine with it. And then I just gradually just started looking up at the sky, and I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing it for too long, just like a few seconds a day. And there's different protocols. Some people say, you start with sunrise and sunset when the sun is the weakest. It's very easy for anyone to look at then, when you gradually work your way up. So, now I can sun gaze for 2-3 hours a day. I can look at the sun in the middle of the day, and it doesn't even hurt, or it's not even like if your eyes are sensitive, you look at the sun and you look away because your eyes can't take it. So your eyes will guide you in terms of how much sun you can take. I think, it's just a process of gradually building up tolerance. And this is this, beneficial stress we talked about. It's the type of stress your body responds to in a good way. And it obviously has a ton of benefits for your body. So it's been really interesting for me. Obviously, tons of energy. I feel like the sun, there is almost like a connection I have with the sun now. And it's I guess, as you could say, it's a bit woo-woo, but I feel like, again, it's part of nature we're kind of connected to. So, we have all these elements inside of us, and we see it around in nature. So we have the earth, we have the air, we have water, we have fire in our environments and in our bodies. And it's almost like if you connect with those elements in nature, you almost get access to a different part of yourself. And it's very, very strong intuition that I feel in terms of ideas that come to me when I'm sun gazing, inspiration, stuff. It just comes to me, and it's just effortless. And life just becomes, a lot easier. You're not struggling so much. You're just kind of guided more and more as you get into this process. So this has kind of been how it's gone for me this year. It's really interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned water there. I find salt baths can be very good for helping my intuition, clearing out energetic toxins. And swimming in the sea is, the sea is very salty. So if you live near the sea, swimming in the sea is restorative. Even just taking a shower, showers are generally not salt water, but just taking a shower feels refreshing. And partly that's because it's clearing your energy and your aura.
Yeah. I think the more you can get into a natural exposure, like swimming in the ocean, obviously to me is much better than having a shower. Maybe you're being sprayed with God knows what's in the tap water, right? So it's all in context. But yeah, I think when I was in Portugal doing the 6-day fast, obviously I'm swimming in the ocean. My body's taking in water through my skin. So even though I'm not drinking it, I'm sure my body is getting some water from that. And that was enough. That was enough to keep me going and feeling great. So yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah, I just want to mention a health note on the scientific front. Not drinking water, not eating for like 6 or 7 days is, fine from a scientific health point of view. Not eating food for up to 30 days is fine from my understanding of the literature. If you don't eat food for like more than 60 days, it starts to be detrimental to most people unless you're really spiritually skilled.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that to anyone without some sort of guidance.
Yeah, and most people who don't have the spiritual side handled typically die after not eating for like 70 or 80 days. That's the typical point on hunger strikes when people die. But there are people who are breatharians who just they don't have to eat for years, and they're just fine because they're taking in their prana and other things other ways.
Yeah, and it is difficult because I think there's there are a lot of charlatans and a lot of quackery in this space. It's hard to discern sometimes what's real and what's not. So I would say to people, you'll only know these things through direct experience. You can listen to me, you can listen to these other people, but ultimately you have to go through this for yourself to decide what's right for you. And I think it is a gradual process. It's not like I suddenly woke up one day and I thought, let's do 6 days without food and water. Like I said, it's an eight-year process for me because I'm going through trial and error. I have no one to follow. I have no sort of guidance. So it's just literally trial and error. So I have been very careful to build up to that kind of stage where I felt confident in my body. I knew what I was going through because I'd done it so many times before. So yeah, so definitely put that in context is important.
And what about biohacking? What is that, and how does that help with your intuition?
Well, I think biohacking is kind of the first step of really trying to figure out how your body works and make it work better. So, there's lots of different biohacks. I think if you follow people like Dave Asprey, Jack Kruse, they talk about some of the things like light, how you can use LED light to, increase blood flow to the brain, for example. So, what's interesting is that it was also kind of a compensation for lack of sunlight. So I used to do those things, and then I found the natural form was actually much superior. So there's lots of different ways of biohacking. I think some of it's really useful. Cold therapy has been something phenomenal in terms of like a stress that's good for you. So I did cold baths and cold showers. I did ice baths in Bali for a while, and that kind of shock to the body. What it does is it basically triggers the response as your body generates heat. And so you basically become much better handling cold and tolerating the cold. And so now I'm able to go out, like I said, all weather. I can go out any time of the day, even in the winter, without just a t-shirt, basically, or not even that, just like with shorts. And I can handle the cold. It doesn't bother me. So I think those things kind of prepare you to be more in your natural environment. And when we're constantly indoors in a climate controlled environment, your body never has that stress. So then when you go outside, you feel cold and you have to put your jacket on, then you're always blocking that connection with nature. So it's really, really interesting how that works. When you start to really be able to interact with nature, your body just becomes super, super strong and super resilient. And you just feel great. You have tons of energy, and you feel like almost immune to the elements. It's really nice.
It is. I mean, I did Kundalini yoga training, and part of that is taking cold showers for the same reasons. And then I did an ice bath in Bangkok with Jeremy Ginsburg, who convinced me to do it. It required some mental stamina to get into the bath. It was full of ice cube. He'd ordered like 25 kilos of ice from the hotel.
Wow. It's like going in the deep end. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was kind of, initially it was like a little painful, but then it felt okay. You kind of numb out. And then, there is a kind of spiritual connection. And I agree with you. It helps. It makes my circulation better, among other things. And it also, my understanding is it flushes out all your internal organs, because the blood rushes in from the outside of your body to the organs in the middle, in the core of your body. And then that flushes them out more than they would normally.
Yeah, it's amazing for your circulation. You'll notice your skin and your face is so much better once you've done. If you take cold showers or you do that regularly, it's a big difference. I find I get very similar benefits now with inversion. That's something else I'm doing, where you basically hanging upside down, and you can use a yoga sling, or you can do it in the park if you've got some bars you can just hang off. But now I'm doing it for 20-30 minutes a day, and again, you're basically reversing the stress of gravity the other way around. So all the time, your body is trying to pump blood or move blood up. And that's the hardest part, to reach your brain. When you flip that around, you've got massive blood flow and circulation to your brain. So again, you have, increases my focus, my brain works so much better. Obviously, your skin's better because of circulation. Like, there's tons of benefits to doing that. And actually, a lot of yoga is about doing inversion. So having the head below the waist changes the flow of energy in your body. And it's just about moving your body, because you're sitting around all day, and basically the energy just gets stagnant. It's not moving. So it's, you can do all these things. You can call them biohacks or whatever you want to call them, but all really interesting ways of basically increasing the flow of energy in your body. Ultimately, that's what it is.
Yeah. One other thing that I think is handy is looking at the chemicals in your environment. Are you eating food with pesticide on it? Because I know that kind of zaps you mentioned processed food, but a lot of food is not just processed. There's a lot of preservatives and pesticides and all kinds of stuff that's in there. And I find those affect my ability to listen to my intuition. If I if I fast, part of fasting is cleaning out those chemicals.
Exactly. So I think periodic fasting helps to reset some of the damage that's been done, because it's very hard to avoid these stresses. It's everywhere in our environment. I think even if you eat organic, there's cross-contamination. So it's not like you can guarantee you're not getting any of this in your environment. Even if you breathe air, you're getting in some kind of pollution. So your body needs that rest, and fasting really does that. And that's why it's so useful to kind of repair the body and heal the body. You never get to do that if you're just eating all the time, because those pathways never get turned on. So it's a natural thing. We wouldn't always have access to food, and during those times the body would be healing and repairing itself. So it's just doing what nature would have done to you anyways. But today we don't have those stresses, so we kind of miss out on that. I think the pesticides thing is important in a way, because if your body's not resilient, it's like an extra stress, and all these stresses are cumulative. So it does wear your resilience down, unless you have very, very strong immune system and resilience, you're probably going to feel that much more. So you should just generally avoid it. I think you can peel the skins off fruits, for example, like cucumbers. I eat a lot of cucumbers, but I peel the skin off just because I know that's where most of the pesticides are. There's certain foods that are more heavily sprayed than others. So, like strawberries in conventional shops, probably best to avoid. But I do eat them now, and I'm not as fussy as I used to be when I was strictly organic, and I was really militant about it, and now I'm a lot less so. So I think, I think when you have that resilience, you worry less about these things, and it's, I guess, not meant to get careless, but I think because I'm generally eating very good food, I don't eat. I think meat is a really important one. I don't eat meat that I feel isn't good quality, and so I'm a lot more selective about that. I feel like meat is a much more contaminated source of food in our modern food supply, and so I just, as long as you know which food sources you're getting your food from, then I think it's easy to make good choices. And I travel a lot, so I can't I can't be so rigid because I don't have like one shop I can order all my organic stuff from. Like when I'm based in one place, it's easier to kind of control that. So I think building up your resilience is the key, and then avoiding the things that really break that down, whatever it is for you. It could be pesticides, it could be the Wi-Fi. You'll know what it's doing to you. So if you're in touch with your body, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with meat is it's higher up the food chain, so the animal has eaten a lot of plants or whatever or a lot of other animals. In the case of fish, for example, they're carnivores. Generally, we don't eat carnivore mammals, but some cultures do. And the problem is that it concentrates the pesticides or whatever other contaminants are going on. So I guess Solient green is totally off the menu for you.
Yeah, I think I try and avoid those type of things. But but the animals, basically animals in modern food supply, they're all indoors. Again, think about what they're going through. They're eating dead food. They're living indoors. So we're eating dead animals that are living indoors, and we're also doing the same thing. So it's like you're just compiling the problems by doing that. So so I do eat meat, but I'm a lot more selective about what I eat now, and I stick to fish mostly and eggs. Meat is the rare sort of exception when I know I'm getting a good quality source.
For me, I also found, looking at the chemicals in the soap and shampoo and conditioner I use, they affect me too, because our skin is able to absorb a lot of chemicals, so.
Yes. And when you take hot showers, your skin becomes a lot more porous. So anything you put on it, again, will affect you more. This is why I take cold showers, because I'm having a much shorter shower, so there's much less exposure to whatever's in the water, but also my skin is less porous. So, and obviously trying to use natural soaps and showers and shampoos and things like that obviously help.
Natural ones that don't, the chemical I avoid is sodium lauryl sulfate.
Right, which is in everything almost,
it's like a chemical soap thing. So, but you can easily get stuff that doesn't have it in. But you'll find nearly all commercial soaps do have that in.
Yeah.
You have to find one where they don't throw it in.
Yeah, I use Dr. Bronner's a lot. That's easy to get pretty much anywhere around the world. That's a good one. And Bali and these places in Asia, it's very easy to find natural soaps.
And some people claim you don't even have to use soap at all. No, seriously.
No, it's
my
funny
father
you say that,
stopped using shampoo because he said, you just rub your hair under the shower, and after a few weeks, it isn't greasy anymore. It's only greasy because you keep stripping out the natural oils in your hair. I mean, you don't think cavemen had shampoo,
Right. I think these are, again, things we obsess about hygiene so much, but we're so focused on external hygiene, we don't really understand internal hygiene is the most important thing. So again, when you shower effectively with hot water as well, you're rubbing off all the vitamin D or the bacteria in your skin that are trying to make vitamin D. So this is one reason we're chronically deficient in vitamin D. Obviously, we don't get enough sunlight, but then we're having these hot showers and just washing off all the bacteria in your skin. And again, using really nasty soaps and shampoos, it does the same thing. So I think we don't need to use shower as much as we think we do, and ultimately, if you have higher quality food sources, you won't need to feel like you need to wash as much. And this is just something I'm still experimenting with, so I wouldn't say I figured it out completely, but I think I'm able to avoid a lot of the nasty, anti-odorants, antiperspirants, deodorants, things like that that I used to use when I was younger. I didn't realize what I was doing. So
I use some deodorant's got tea tree oil in it, doesn't have aluminium in it, and so that's a good thing as well. And I do a compromise with the shower. I do use soap under my armpits and in my groin, just because they seem to be the more smelly bits of the body. But I don't rub soap all over my body. So
Yeah. I try and avoid it every day. Maybe, like you said, just do those bits, but a total body, wash maybe, a few times a week, but not every day, because again, you're rubbing everything off. So if you're going to spend all the time to get the nature and the vitamin D, then why would you want to wash it off? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think these are just things we don't really understand because no one's told you them. So you have to kind of figure these things out for yourself.
Yeah. What about microdosing? Is that a way to hack your intuition up, or?
I think if you look at what you're doing, you're trying to kind of, again, mimic things that are in nature. So there's sort of plant spirit and shamanism has been a big part of our culture, ways to reconnect with nature, right? That's what you're doing. So there are definite fields of energy or consciousness found in nature, and you can connect with them with different mushrooms, with different plants. I think microdosing is kind of a very powerful way of just opening up those parts of awareness. They can be useful, but if done in the wrong context, it can also be dangerous or harmful. It really depends. I think a lot of entrepreneurs always trying to find the shortcut and the hack to something, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm just going to microdose. I haven't done it personally, but I have done drugs in the past. So in terms of psychedelics and things, I think it is useful to kind of change your state of consciousness once in a while to realize there's more out there. But if I'm just doing it recreationally, I don't think it's that much benefit as to doing it in a context. So I think, I'm more interested in doing it maybe with a shaman in the future and having those kind of experiences that I feel are more useful to really understanding what I'm experiencing. Otherwise, I don't have any framework to really understand what I'm seeing. I don't know. Probably other people will see it differently, but that's kind of, how I see it.
I know it's pretty popular in the Bay Area, microdosing LSD or mushrooms or whatever. So you don't take enough to get high or psychedelic, but it's kind of an undercurrent of psychedelic experience or creativity. And I tried it out with San Pedro, which is a cactus that people take in Latin America for psychedelic experiences. But instead of taking the regular dose, I took about a 30th of it. And it did affect my creativity, and I got a few more spiritual guides that came in. I was doing a protocol of one day doing the dose and then one day off, which I did for 10 days. And then I took a 10-day break and then repeated a few times. And then my intuition said, okay, you got all you're going to get from this for now. So you don't need to.
That's interesting. And did you do it with under the guidance of anyone who showed you what to do, or you just researched it from the internet and figured out for yourself kind of what you
I had the intuition to do it. I'd heard about people microdosing LSD. I wasn't drawn to that, but San Pedro seemed to be a good thing. I did find some other people did I find it? I can't remember I think I did find some stuff on the internet, but basically I followed my own intuition as to what to do. And I'd taken a full dose of San Pedro previously. And I know people take it all the time without harm. So I wasn't too worried about it. And it's totally legal to do in Peru, and it's legal in England too to get San Pedro. I think in many US states it isn't, but how you can make a plant illegal boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's a whole nother way of limiting people's reality. So it's it's very, very clever game. Yeah.
So what about all these different hacks? Are they more important than being a light being, or you mentioned this earlier before we hit record, that you thought being a light being was more powerful than any of the diet or exercise stuff.
Yeah, I feel like conventional nutrition and science focuses on diet and exercise. And again, this is a way of limiting your reality. Say, look at this, look at this, look at this. And even within diet and exercise, there's so many conflicting systems, so sugar-free, fat-free, just confusing people with all this nonsense. And then again, exercise and go to the gym, where actually if you do that and you're working out indoors, it can be really bad for you long-term because you're stressing your body in a very unnatural environment. So I think what I've come to realize is that your environment is the most important factor, and obviously light comes down to light, where you're taking in light from. So we have photoreceptors all over our body. We're receiving light all the time. We're also transmitting light. If you look at biophotons, Rupert Sheldrake's work, we're constantly receiving and emitting light, and the science is just starting to catch up with this, because again, this is something probably that people have known about for centuries, but the science is just starting to be able to measure these things to say that there is a certain amount of light coming off. So we receive light from the sun or from blue light, and it has a completely different effect. And I think that your metabolism, your energy, everything works completely differently in those different environments. So, you can have a banana outdoors or indoors, in the summer or the winter, and conventional science will just tell you a calorie is a calorie, but actually your body responds completely differently in different environments, in different seasons. So I think diet and exercise are useful as kind of a foundation, but it's definitely not the be all and end all. You cannot compensate for a bad environment with good food and exercise. It just doesn't work. Ultimately, your body, your mitochondria needs that natural energy from the sun. It needs that natural connection to the earth to function properly. So I think if you start to look at your at the cellular level, at your mitochondria, how they operate, how they make ATP, you'll start to realize there's a lot more going on than just diet and exercise in terms of how your body responds to the environment is really key.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I know Rupert Sheldrake did a TEDx talk talking about the use of psychedelics to help access other parts of your mind, and
that got shut down pretty quick.
It got shut down by some people who are afraid to talk about this stuff. So it's interesting, and I've seen that on Wikipedia too. That there'll be info up on Wikipedia, and then there's like I don't want to get too conspiracy nutty, but there is a group of people who are like hardcore scientists. They're hardcore scientists, and they don't believe any spirituality is valid. And if there's any Wikipedia article that suggests, any of the things we've been talking about might be good for you, they go in and try and delete it or fill it full of things saying, fasting is dangerous, you shouldn't be doing this, and that kind of thing. So, and I've been involved in some of those. I've been on a Wikipedia editor for a long time, as anyone can be, but I've seen that from the inside, some of those character attacks on people or deleting of posts.
I think anytime there's a fear message or it evokes fear in you, you have to question that, because fear is one of the strongest ways of blocking intuition. Whenever you can put someone in a state of fear, you're just shutting down their energy, you're shutting down their intuition, and it's a very, very common thing to do. So we run around all the time scared of things. Either we're scared of the government going to take our freedom, or we're scared of this food's going to damage us, or we're scared of something. It's just fear, and when you get past that, your body basically is much, much in a stronger state in terms of resilience to handle anything. So I feel like all these things people worry about with the diet and exercise, you can be so meticulous, but ultimately, if anything evokes fear in you and you worry about it too much, that is not the state you want to be in. And we're talking about intuition at the end of the day, so I think that's a really important takeaway.
Yeah, and one of the things I wrote in my book is if you're feeling worry in your business, see if you can substitute what would it take, which is one of the questions I
love
use
that one.
to help. Yeah, it's a question to get in touch with your intuition. So if you're worried, I'm worried that there won't be enough money to pay my bills this month. Flip it into what will it take to have more than enough money to pay all my bills this month? Whatever the worry or fear is, we have the tools to reframe or to pivot these beliefs and thoughts that we have.
Yeah, so, you're just flipping that belief system around and taking out the part that shuts you down, that kind of puts you into that stress or that fear state.
Yeah. So if you're constantly in a stress state, which many entrepreneurs and business leaders are, how does that block your intuition?
I think that all the states of fear and come from a place of scarcity and almost separation. So it's almost how you're perceiving what's available to you. Like you said, what would it take to have more money for next month? So whenever you see things from a place of lack or scarcity, that kind of evokes fear, and your intuition is the thing that can guide you to any problem you have in terms of a solution. So there's two ways to looking at a problem. You can either focus on the problem, or you can look at the problem but detach from it and try and step away from the fear, the instant emotional response, and let your intuition kind of guide you. So again, like I just said, being in nature for me is the most powerful way to kind of detach from that state of stress, because you're changing your physiology, and from that it changes your whole mental state and your emotional state. So there's different sort of exercises or triggers you can do to change that state, but ultimately when you're worried about a lack of something or a scarcity of something, you're never going to solve the problem in that state. And your intuition, may be trying to help you, but you're not going to be able to listen to it because you're just going to be worrying about the problem or obsessing about the problem.
So you've just described 99% of modern cubicle man and woman's existence.
Right, exactly. And it carries on into the entrepreneur world. You think you escape that when you leave the cubicle, but ultimately you have all those programs still running in your head sometimes. So it's, we're always trying to rush around and do more and have more, but that only gets you so far. So it's
the other two things I've noticed add to stress are overwhelm, feeling there's too many things to do and not enough time, which you alluded to earlier, and it's easy as an entrepreneur to feel you have to do everything yourself, and there's just too much to do. So, getting rid of overwhelm is definitely helpful. And maybe I'll put a link in the show notes to some tools for spiritually getting rid of that. And the other one for me is just drama. If there's like office politics or other energy vampires going on, that tends to stress me out. So I typically in my businesses, I when I'm hiring, I screen for whether people create that kind of thing. And then I'll do energy work on the team so we don't have energy vampire stuff going on.
Yeah.
And if someone is doing energy vampire and I can't shift it energetically, I don't need them in my company.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things as an entrepreneur is you can choose your environment be a bit more selective about what you expose yourself to. And if you have the skills to transform or shift that energy, obviously that's really powerful as well. So for me, I think, I use nature in terms of a morning ritual. I have that morning ritual that really sets me up, and I just feel so good at the end of it that whatever I encounter during the day, it doesn't even faze me. And I think most people, if they don't have some way to really build themselves up, then the stress from the day just kind of wears them down until they're just tired, and then they're probably working through the night to try and finish something they think they need to finish, and so they're not getting the right sleep. So it's again this whole understanding of how we try and achieve and by doing more, but actually your body has all the resources it needs. You have all the intuition you need. You just need to know how to take care of your body and access your intuition, and things just kind of flow much easier. So I think that has been kind of the biggest journey for me, is getting away from trying to push and do everything with force and striving so hard, to just kind of stepping back and saying, I'm going to take care of myself first, take care of my body. When I'm in a good place, I'm going to be able to do much more, and it's going to be much easier. So it's there's different ways to approach it.
So talking about your environment, I know you've been co-creating the X Mansion, which is like the next level entrepreneurial co-living, co-working space, and the first one's coming up real soon in Lisbon, in Portugal, for a month. So tell us, what exactly is the X Mansion?
Yeah, so I had this idea for a while. I kind of, I wanted to be around other inspiring people because, like I said, your environment is the most important thing. And I think some of the biggest shifts for me have been around other inspiring people, and some of the people that have been greatest teachers in my life, I've been in a very immersive environment. So, you can spend sometimes, go to a conference, meet really cool people, but then it's just a few days and then you go back to your normal environment, and it's very hard sometimes to follow through on all that sort of inspiration or energy you felt. So I wanted to create more of a longer experience, which is more immersive, where you kind of pick things up by being in that environment for longer. And again, it's about changing your state. So getting out of your normal environment, getting into a very different environment, and obviously one that's so inspiring and supportive. So this is really meant for like people who are leaders in their field, who already, have kind of a good foundation, but then have stuff they want to share, and also they want to kind of take their growth to the next level. So I think, we're all focusing on business. That's a very normal thing to try and be successful, but your business is only going to be successful as the person running the business. So I think we don't look at ourselves as that vehicle very closely, and we don't really understand that. So for me, I wanted to take some of what I've learned and share that with other entrepreneurs, share that with other leaders. And I think that so many people in my network have got so many cool talents and skills. If everyone came together for, a week or a few weeks or a month, that kind of environment would just be so powerful to create an environment for people to learn and share and grow. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. So I met Nicole a few weeks ago. We both shared that kind of vision, and we just straight away connected over the idea. We're like, yeah, let's do this, because this is something we both really wanted to create. And so we put it together. You can check it out. It's on thexmansion.com. The first house is going to be in Lisbon starting on the 1st of September. So we're already putting the word out, through our networks and trying to get the right people together. It's really important that you do have, like you say, the right people, because you have all kinds of people in your environment, like you said, energy vampires and these things. So we're really trying to make sure we have a good environment, really inspiring people who have stuff to share and really want to come and learn together and kind of grow together. So yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be really fun. You can check out the website and see more details there.
So are you deciding who gets invited based on your intuition, or do you look at whether they're an energy vampire? And you don't have to give us the full details necessarily, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's an interesting screening process. I mean, we're putting it out through our network, so I think again, mostly people we already know and we're connecting with. It's not going to be people we've never met before, because obviously it's going to be much harder to select. So I think Nicole's got very good intuition. I'm able to sense.
She has outstanding intuition. She was on the podcast right at the beginning, and she's got
Yeah,
She told some amazing stories.
Very cool. I'll have to go have a listen to that one. Yeah, so when I met her, I could sense that she was the right type of person in terms of a good partner to kind of try, and create this kind of environment in the house. So yeah, so we came together. Obviously, we've got some mutual friends, but we've got our own network. So we're just basically sharing that kind of message, what we want to bring and create. And yeah, this one's super short notice. So we're going to do this one as kind of an experiment, see how it works. Obviously, take away some learnings and try and actually record some of the material to actually share that with other people. So I think it's going to become kind of a platform for that, sharing that learning, sharing that growth in a very immersive environment, because like I was saying before, you can kind of understand things intellectually, but it's very hard to shift in terms of behaviors and habits to create better ones in your normal environment. So what we really want to do in the house is have a place where people can just be totally outside of the normal environment and really develop the kind of lasting habits and lasting change. And it could be it could be diet, it could be exercise, it could be a number of things, mental hacks and just blocks and resistance you might have. So I think you're very familiar with all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you definitely should come to the house at some point. But I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Lisbon for the DCX Lisbon and the DNX Global conferences. So I definitely will be coming to visit the house and help out in some way. And very cool. Just for the people listening, I just want to break down some of the words we use there. We mentioned it's co-living, and people may be thinking, is this a hippie commune? But no, co-living means everyone has their own living space, but they share, like the living room or the kitchen or whatever.
Just like housemates. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more separate than housemates.
Well,
depends on what kind of co-living it is, I guess.
Sure. You have your own room, your own bathroom potentially. So there are some couples and some singles depending on who's coming. So, but yeah, you come together in that living space to really share, and obviously going out together to to the city and things like that to have meals together. So it's trying to be as open and together as possible, really supporting each other with whatever challenges you're having, and obviously bring leaders who already have something to share. So something that you really want to bring, you think the world needs to hear about it, and it would make other people's lives so much more powerful. That's really the key of the house. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, so the co-living movement, I think, comes from Denmark. And I had a friend who was in a 40-unit co-living, and she basically had her own apartment.
Wow.
But they had a party room and a garden and a tool room, and they had several shared things, and there was more of a sense of community.
That's more like an intentional community almost.
It could be well, in her case, it was not so much of an intentional community, but it could be an intentional community. Now, I live part-time in an intentional community in Peru, so we each have our own space there, but we share like the kitchen and the yoga room and the garden.
How long have you done that for?
I've been living here over 2 years, and I've been involved in the community for 6 years. So, yeah, it's great.
How do you find that as an environment to live in with other people? How do you get along with them? Is that something you were just attracted to, or you've done it before and then?
I had done exactly that before. I had done roommates before, which was somewhat frustrating at times, depending on who you get and how smart you are at screening the roommates. Now I think I'd be better at it. But certainly the community has improved at time. We have some written agreements that everyone agrees to. They're called Common Grounds, which we got from a community in Findhorn in Scotland that's been going for 40 years. So,
I've heard of that one.
And we also do a lot of regular spiritual cleaning of the energy in the house, and we set up magic doorways on the house. So if someone wants to come in, they have to have a higher vibration. I mean, they can have a lower vibration outside the house, but if they're going to enter, they have to maintain a higher vibration. And there are practical rules like, we do allow alcohol in moderation, but you can't get drunk, and you can't take drugs in the house. And, you're expected to communicate clearly with other people in various ways. So it just seems to do. And we have a monthly house meeting where we sit and kind of meditate and share and express and witness. So it's not so much a griping session as a chance to express, here's something that's not working for me in the community, but it's not a fix-it session. It's like you put that energy into the circle, and then everyone meditates to just let go that energy, and that seems to help a lot too. So
it's a very mature way of dealing with stuff. I've seen it work out very differently when I'm sharing houses sometimes, but that sounds ideal.
Yeah. Anyway, the other word I wanted to deconstruct was co-working, because many people listening may not have experienced that. I mean, that a co-working space is somewhere where people come together who aren't in the same company, but it's like a place where you have good quality Wi-Fi. And I mean, it could be a coffee shop. A lot of people do co-working informally in coffee shops, but there are actual spaces that are designed specifically for co-working, that, you know, you have a printer there and a photocopier, and maybe there's someone who can act as a receptionist in case you want to organize meetings, you know. So, and then
co-working, co-working is
ahead.
something we'll be looking at. I think we'll probably tie up with the co-working space in Lisbon. There's some really good ones there. And obviously in the house, there'll be a space for people to do the co-working. I think, you know, we're bringing together leaders, so they have their businesses to run, and they need a way to do that kind of, you know, effectively and easily. So it's making that part as easy as possible so that they don't have to worry about the details, and then they can just spend their free time actually connecting with people. And that's the kind of platform we want to create to make that part really easy. So yeah, they don't have to worry about Wi-Fi and things like that.
And then the third term I want to deconstruct for listeners is the X in the X mansion. What does that mean for you?
I guess the X is almost like, you know, everyone uses it, but it's like that X factor or whatever that your superpower is, you know, because I think we all have this potential. So it's like everyone has a different gift, and, you know, it could be something to do with business. It could be something to do with health. You know what that is, you know what you're really good at, you know what your strengths are. So coming to the house is really like, I'm willing to share this with the house. I'm willing to open up and really tell people how I've, you know, come to know this in myself and how I can bring that out in other people. So that's that kind of, you know, that potential we all have in us.
That's so cool. I thought it stood for experiment or experience.
It kind of is that too, in a way. Yeah, you can look at it like that. Yeah.
Now, I went to a co-living, co-working house in Barcelona, the Entrepreneur House, and that was an amazing experience. So I'm very excited what you're doing with the X Mansion. It sounds like that's another flavor of this kind of the next level of entrepreneur creativity and living and working.
Yeah, I know Chris, who runs the entrepreneur houses. He does a great job. I think, you know, he's very business focused, and so he does a great job in helping people accelerate their businesses. And obviously, that's something everyone needs help with. And I guess, you know, we're trying to obviously help that too. But like I said, looking at who's running the business, because ultimately you're that vehicle, and the business is only going to work as effectively as you're working. So if you're tired or you're stressed or you're not in the right state, your business is going to reflect that. And people somehow separate those things. They just think I can build a really successful business, but I'm not treating myself well. I'm looking after myself. Well, guess what? It's going to catch up with you at some point. So I think that, yeah, trying to understand that kind of balance to really look after yourself from that place, you can obviously create anything, and it could be a powerful business, could be whatever your vision is. So it's really looking at that side of it as well.
Great. Well, as we wrap up the interview, I've got a few questions I ask everyone, which is, first one is, why are you proud to use your business intuition?
Proud. I'm not sure I'm proud to use it. I'm just happier. I feel like it makes life easier for me. So yeah, from always trying to struggle and strive to do stuff and push, I feel like when you are using intuition, things just come much faster to you. You can create much more easily with much less stress. And so it just feels like a more natural way to live. Not just in business, but, you know, in life in general. The relationships you have, communication is obviously really important. So it's just like you can apply it to all aspects of your life, and your business just runs more smoothly. So it's yeah, it's you gravitate to what you love, what your passion is. So, you know, I've moved away from doing certain types of businesses and moved towards health and fitness and cryptocurrencies and other things that are really exciting for me. And yeah, you just get to meet some really interesting people. So you just don't know where it's going to go. It's a very interesting way to live. Yeah.
Fabulous. And I totally agree with what you said. You know, if you want to have less stress in your life and more joy, more profits, using your intuition in your business openly is definitely a good thing to do. And using it openly helps because not only does it give you more practice, but it also inspires all your staff and clients and vendors to use their intuition openly. So, you know, we're all leaders. When we're an entrepreneur, we're a leader in our business area. It's a chance to do that. And I also believe that if every business leader openly used their intuition, they would make less stupid decisions that hurt other people and hurt the planet. And if you look at traditional corporate culture, the number of humans who get hurt because they have dead-end soul-sucking jobs, or they're laid off, or they're put in environments that are toxic, either literally toxic, that are killing their physical bodies, or emotionally toxic. or the company does wacky things to the planet, you know. And I really believe people would not make those kind of decisions as much. I'm not guaranteeing they wouldn't make any, but I think there would be less, way less.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you and for me, when you connect with nature, you realize how important nature is and the environment is, and all the things we're doing with business today is very against that. You know, we kind of disconnected ourselves, so we just look to see what we can take from nature, and we just look at it as like a resource to be used, and obviously that's not sustainable. So collectively, you know, there's a lot of mistakes we're going to have to learn from, and individually in our businesses, I think we make a lot of mistakes when we're rushing around and trying to, you know, from a place of fear and stress, trying to just accumulate more or get more without looking at the impact of what that's having around us. And so, yeah, definitely having that, you know, intuition will help you make better decisions, and just without having those same kind of regrets if you look back. So yeah.
So here's my second question for you, Michael. What would it take for you to make business intuition more openly used this year?
In my business or in the world?
In the world. Well, let's not have small goals here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like it. Yeah, I think, you know, that is part of what the expansion is about, because I think if we can access intuition ourselves, it applies to business as well. So if you're bringing leaders together and they all have a lot of influence in their own circles and their own environments, you know, they go back to their homes and their communities. If they're changed, that is the most powerful change I think we can shift. It's all by example and by experience, and that's really why I create the house, because that immersive learning experience, it is transformational, and it does develop lasting shifts, and that's what we're trying to show to people, what they can be and how it can feel. So yeah, I think doing that bit by bit, person by person, that is how we change the world.
I think that's really inspiring what you're doing there. I'm just going to push one bit further, which is you're probably going to affect, you know, maybe is it 20, 30 people who live or visit the house in Lisbon. What would it take for the X Mansion to affect the hundreds of millions of business leaders there are in the world this year?
Yeah, that's a very cool question. It's always good to push one step further. I think, like I said, obviously everyone can't attend the houses in person. So obviously we'll be having houses around the world in the future. We are going to record some of these events and these talks and these interviews to really share that more widely. So we have a Facebook group where people are coming together, even if they can't come to the house, you know, they can access some of this stuff and obviously maybe come to a future house. So you just have to spread the word whatever way you can. And obviously if that message is inspiring, they'll share it, you know, in their social networks, and the word will get around. So I feel like if everyone does that, the word will get around pretty quickly. And, you know, we're not the only people doing this. I'm sure that other people are having the same idea in different parts of the world. And so it's just part of the movement, I think, that's happening. And yeah, it's really exciting time to be alive.
It is. Well, I salute you for what you're doing with the X Mansion. Thanks so much for being on the show. If people want to find you, xmansion.com is a good place, or they can find you as Michael Pohl on Facebook. And we'll put all that info in the show notes to go along with some links that we mentioned for the cool stuff. So thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I share a lot on Facebook, so feel free to connect with me. And there's a Facebook group for the X Mansion as well, so you can find out all about that there.